I never thought that at 68 years old I would be faking unconsciousness in a hospital bed just to hear my own son whisper, "This is the last time you breathe, old man." He said it as he disconnected my oxygen with his own hands, trying to kill me for my money. Before we continue, subscribe to William's Revenge Stories. Click the notification bell, because we have new stories every single day. Leave a like and tell us in the comments what city you're watching from. My name is Michael, and what I'm about to tell you changed my perspective on family, loyalty, and the true value of the people we think we know, forever. For 68 years, I built a life I thought was solid, a thriving company, Vasquez Construction, which I built brick by brick since I was 25. A wonderful wife, Elizabeth, my faithful partner for 4 decades, and 2 children who I thought were my greatest pride. Emily, my 9-year-old daughter, was always independent and hardworking. Since she was young, she showed strong character and solid principles. She left for Chicago 15 years ago to develop her career as an architect, visiting us religiously every month and keeping in constant contact. She never asked me to borrow money, nor did she show excessive interest in the family business. Adam, on the other hand, was always different. At 42, married to Karen for 10 years, he never managed to establish himself professionally on his own. He worked sporadically at the family company, but without real commitment or responsibility. His constant job changes and failed projects worried me, although I always justified his behavior, thinking he would eventually mature. On March 10, 2024, I was admitted to Mercy General Hospital with severe pneumonia. The doctors explained that my age complicated the situation, requiring a long hospitalization and continuous supplemental oxygen. During the first few days, both Adam and Karen showed genuine concern, visiting me daily and offering constant help. However, something began to worry me. Adam's questions became strangely specific and persistent. He didn't ask so much about my health as he did about documents, bank passwords, the location of important papers, and details about my will. "Dad, where do you keep the bank documents? Is the will updated? Who has the keys to the company?" Initially, I interpreted these questions as natural concern from a son given my delicate state. I thought he wanted to be prepared to help in case of an emergency. I was even moved to see my son apparently so involved and responsible for the first time in years. But there was something in his tone, in the insistence, in the way his eyes lit up when I mentioned figures or important documents. Karen also participated actively in these conversations, making mental notes of every detail I shared. Their knowing glances, when they thought I wasn't watching, started to create a strange feeling in my stomach. Dr. Charles Johnson, my attending physician, was optimistic about my recovery, but he emphasized the importance of absolute rest and continuous oxygen. "Mr. Michael, your body is responding well to the treatment, but you must avoid any stress or shock. The oxygen is vital for your full recovery," he explained during his morning rounds. During those first few days, while I remained connected to the oxygen equipment, I began to observe the behavior of those around me more closely. Elizabeth, my wife, showed genuine motherly concern, bringing me homemade food and keeping me informed about minor matters at home. Her tears, when the doctors explained my condition, were authentic. They came from the heart. Emily called from Chicago 3 times a day, always asking for specific medical details and offering to fly out immediately if necessary. "Dad, how are your oxygen levels? Have the doctors changed the treatment? I can get on the first flight tomorrow," she would tell me, her voice breaking with distance and worry. Adam and Karen, however, seemed more interested in material aspects than my actual well-being. Their conversations systematically drifted towards financial topics, properties, and the future of the company. When they mentioned my health, it sounded rehearsed, artificial, as if they were following a social protocol rather than expressing genuine feelings. On the fourth day of my hospitalization, something definitively changed my perspective. The early morning of March 14 changed my life forever. It was approximately 3:15 a.m. when I heard stealthy footsteps approaching my room. The sedatives I had been given to help me rest kept me in a drowsy state, but my mind remained partially alert. I immediately recognized Adam's silhouette entering cautiously through the partially open door. He moved with calculated precision, as if he had rehearsed every movement beforehand. The dim light from the hallway cast unsettling shadows on his face, revealing an expression I had never seen on my son: cold, determined, completely devoid of any trace of filial love. My survival instinct activated instantly. Something in his behavior alerted me to an imminent danger. I decided to keep my eyes closed and control my breathing, pretending to be deeply sedated. It was a decision that would save my life. Adam slowly approached my bed, stopping next to the oxygen equipment that kept me stable. For several seconds he remained motionless, apparently checking that I was completely unconscious. I could feel his nervous breathing, the imperceptible tremor in his hands, the tension emanating from his entire body. What happened next surpassed my worst nightmares. With deliberate and calculated movements, he began to manipulate the oxygen tube connected to my nose. First, he slightly loosened the connection, as if testing the system's resistance. Then, with a determination that chilled my blood, he completely disconnected the oxygen supply. At that moment, leaning into my ear, he whispered the words that would be engraved in my memory forever. "This is the last time you breathe, old man. It's time for you to rest forever, and let us live in peace." The initial shock almost made me react involuntarily, but I managed to maintain absolute self-control. My heart was pounding wildly, but I continued to fake unconsciousness as I listened to every word that came from my own son's mouth. Karen was right. He continued speaking in a low voice, believing I couldn't hear him. "We've been waiting for years for you to decide to retire and transfer the company to us, but your stubbornness is ruining us. The banks won't wait any longer. Dad, we've taken on commitments thinking about the inheritance, and now we need immediate liquidity." His words revealed a macabre plan that left me completely devastated. It wasn't a momentary impulse or a desperate decision. It was a carefully elaborated plan between him and his wife to eliminate me and take possession of everything I had built over decades of honest work. Vasquez Construction is easily worth $2.5 million in the current market. He continued his sinister monologue. With that amount, we can pay off the debts on the Miami condo, the personal loans we took out last year, and we'd still have enough money left over to live comfortably without working for several years. The magnitude of his betrayal hit me like a hammer. Not only was he trying to murder me, but he had also been using my company as collateral to take on personal debts without my knowledge or authorization. The trust I had placed in him for years had been systematically betrayed. "Emily will never find out anything," he went on, with a coldness that terrified me. "She lives too far away and has always been disconnected from the family business. By the time she gets back from Chicago for the funeral, we will have already legalized the transfer of properties. Karen already consulted with her lawyer cousin about the express succession procedures." Every word was a direct stab to my father's heart. The son I had raised, educated, and loved unconditionally for 4 decades was planning my death with the same casualness as planning a vacation for approximately 10 minutes. I remained without supplemental oxygen, feeling my body begin to experience the first signs of deprivation. My mental training, developed over years of making business decisions under pressure, allowed me to maintain an external calm while internally I fought against panic and the desperate need to take a deep breath. Adam continued talking, apparently satisfied with the progress of his diabolical plan. "Tomorrow morning, when the nurses discover that the equipment was accidentally disconnected during the night, it will be too late. At your age and with pneumonia, no one will suspect anything strange. It will be classified as a natural medical fatality." The precision of his planning showed me that this was not an improvised plan. They had carefully studied my medical condition, the hospital protocols, the nursing staff's routines, and had calculated exactly how to execute the perfect crime without raising suspicion at that critical moment. When I was starting to feel dizzy from the lack of oxygen, I heard footsteps approaching in the hospital corridor. The footsteps approaching down the corridor intensified quickly. Adam panicked when he realized someone was heading directly toward my room at this hour of the morning. With clumsy and desperate movements, he tried to hastily reconnect the oxygen tube, but his nervousness betrayed him. The door opened completely, and the hallway light illuminated the entire scene. It was Nurse Chloe, the night shift supervisor, a 4 or 5-year-old woman with over 20 years of hospital experience. Her professional and trained gaze immediately caught that something was wrong with the situation. "What are you doing here at this hour, Mr. Vasquez?" Chloe asked in a firm but polite tone, addressing Adam as she turned on the room lights. Her eyes immediately fell on the oxygen equipment, noticing that the connections were not in their usual position. Adam stammered, visibly nervous, desperately searching for a convincing explanation. I came to check on Dad. I thought he was having trouble breathing, and I noticed the oxygen tube was a little loose. I was just trying to secure it better." Chloe professionally approached the medical equipment, meticulously inspecting every connection with the experience of someone who has seen similar situations before. "That's strange, Mr. Vasquez. I checked this equipment myself less than 2 hours ago, during my 1:30 a.m. rounds, and everything was perfectly connected and functioning normally. The tension in the room was so thick you could cut it with a knife." Adam tried to maintain his composure, but beads of sweat began to form on his forehead. Maybe it came loose on its own. You know how this hospital equipment is. Sometimes the connections move. Meanwhile, I continued to pretend to be deeply sedated. But internally my mind was working at lightning speed, processing all the information I had heard. Chloe represented my immediate salvation. But I also understood that I needed to handle this situation with extreme caution, to avoid prematurely alerting Adam that I knew about his murderous intentions. Chloe took her small flashlight and carefully examined my vital signs, checking my pulse, temperature, and oxygen saturation levels on the digital monitor. "Mr. Michael's parameters show a slight irregularity in the last few minutes. The saturation dropped temporarily, but it's stabilizing again. Is that normal?" Adam asked, trying to sound concerned, but unable to completely hide his nervousness. "With patients of your father's age and in his medical condition, any interruption in the oxygen supply can be potentially dangerous," Chloe explained as she meticulously noted the situation on her electronic tablet. "That's why we have strict protocols and perform constant checks every 2 hours. I discreetly watched as Chloe meticulously recorded every detail: the exact time, the state of the equipment, Adam's presence, the irregularities in my vital signs. Her professionalism and attention to detail partially reassured me, knowing that a documented trail of what happened had been left. "Mr. Vasquez, I appreciate your concern for your father, but I must remind you that visits outside of established hours require prior authorization from the medical staff," Chloe continued with diplomatic firmness. "Furthermore, any handling of medical equipment must be done exclusively by trained personnel." Adam nodded submissively, but I could perceive the frustration and anger contained in his facial expression. His perfect plan had been interrupted at the most critical moment, and now he had to retreat without having achieved his macabre objective. "Of course, nurse. I was just worried about Dad. Are you sure he is stable now?" he asked, making one last attempt to get information about my real condition. "Mr. Michael is responding adequately to the treatment. His vital signs have completely normalized, and the oxygen supply is functioning correctly," Chloe replied as she performed a final check of the equipment. "I suggest you return during the established visiting hours from 10 a.m. to 11 p.m. After Adam left in a huff, Chloe remained in the room for several more minutes, conducting a complete review of all monitoring systems. Her professional experience had taught her to trust her instincts, and something about that whole situation hadn't seemed completely normal to her. Once she confirmed we were alone, I opened my eyes slightly and whispered very softly, "Nurse Chloe." She approached immediately, surprised that I was conscious. "Mr. Michael, how do you feel? Were you awake during your son's visit? I heard everything." I confessed in a barely audible voice. I need to make an urgent phone call, but no one can know. It's a matter of life or death. Chloe looked at me with a serious expression, processing the gravity implied in my words. Her hospital experience had taught her to recognize complicated family situations, and my tone of desperate urgency confirmed to her that something very serious was happening. "What do you need me to do, Mr. Michael?" she asked with professionalism and absolute discretion. "My cell phone is in the nightstand drawer. I need to call my lawyer, James Miller. It is essential that I speak with him immediately, before my son returns tomorrow." Chloe discreetly retrieved my phone and helped me make the call. It was 4:20 inches the morning. But James was a trusted friend of more than 20 years, and I knew he would answer a genuine emergency no matter the hour. "Michael, what's wrong? Are you okay?" James answered with a worried voice after the third ring. "James, I need to see you urgently at the hospital. It's a legal and personal emergency that I can't explain over the phone. Can you come right now?" "Of course, Michael. I'll be there in 40 minutes. Max. Do you need me to bring any specific documents?" "Bring everything related to my current will and the company's incorporation documents. We are going to make immediate and definitive changes." James arrived at the hospital at exactly 5:10 a.m., dressed in a formal suit and carrying his black leather briefcase. Chloe had discreetly coordinated his entry, presenting him to the security staff as a specialist medical consultant, who was coming to evaluate my case at the family's urgent request. The strategy worked perfectly. In hospitals like Mercy General, emergency medical consultations at any hour are completely normal, especially for elderly patients with respiratory complications. James had even brought a white doctor's coat that he used as a convincing disguise. "Michael, explain to me exactly what happened," James said, once Chloe left us alone, securing the door and keeping a discreet watch from the outside. I recounted every detail of the traumatic experience. Adam's stealthy entry, the deliberate disconnection of the oxygen, his confessions about prearranged plans with Karen, the debts incurred, using my company as collateral without authorization, and his calculated coldness in planning my murder as a financial solution. James listened with an increasingly grave expression, taking detailed notes in his legal pad. His experience as a lawyer specializing in family and probate law allowed him to immediately grasp the legal and personal implications of the entire situation. "Michael, this constitutes attempted premeditated murder," he explained with absolute seriousness. "But before taking any legal action, we must protect your assets immediately. If Adam has incurred debts using the company as collateral, they could seize assets at any time. That's exactly why I called you. James, I need to completely change my will this very morning. Adam must be totally excluded from any inheritance, and Emily must receive all my assets and the company." James opened his briefcase and took out several legal documents, along with his laptop. "I have your current will here, dated September 2021, where you established an equal distribution between Adam and Emily. Are you completely sure you want to remove him entirely?" "This decision will be irreversible." "Absolutely sure," I replied without any hesitation. "A son who tries to murder his own father for money doesn't deserve a single dollar of what I've built my entire life. Emily has always shown integrity, independence, and solid values. She will be the sole heir." Over the next hour, James meticulously drafted the new will with precise legal specifications. The document stated that Emily Vasquez would receive 100% of Vasquez Construction, all real estate properties, bank accounts, investments, and any assets of value belonging to my personal estate. Simultaneously, we included specific clauses that invalidated any debt or financial commitment incurred by Adam using my name, my company, or my properties as collateral. These legal protections were essential to prevent his creditors from claiming any part of my estate. "We also need to contact Elizabeth immediately to initiate a complete financial investigation," James suggested. "We must identify exactly what commitments Adam has made and with which banking entities or lenders. Elizabeth has access to all the household files and knows the location of important documents. She can review bank correspondence, contracts, and any paperwork Adam might have signed behind my back. I confirmed. We called Elizabeth from my phone. Although it was 6:30 inches the morning, she answered immediately, her concern for my health evident. "Michael, how are you feeling? Love? Did something get worse during the night?" she asked with genuine tenderness that contrasted dramatically with our son's murderous intentions. "Elizabeth, I need you to do something very important for me. Go to the home study immediately and check all the bank documents from the last 2 years. Look for any paper that has Adam's signature, especially loan contracts, guarantees, or collateral involving our properties. Something serious has happened." "Michael, your voice sounds very tense," my wife perceived intuitively. "I'll explain the details when you come to the hospital, but it's crucial that you bring all the documentation you find. James is here with me, and we are handling an urgent legal matter related to the company." Elizabeth, always efficient and committed, confirmed that she would be at the hospital before 9 a.m. with all the requested documents. Her unconditional loyalty during 4 decades of marriage was a heartbreaking contrast to our son's betrayal. While we waited, James and I strategically planned the next steps. It was crucial to maintain absolute discretion about our legal moves until all the asset modifications were complete and we had full documentary evidence of Adam's fraudulent activities. "Michael, once we sign this new will, it will be automatically registered with the Registry of Last Wills," James explained. "However, I also recommend that we prepare a sworn affidavit detailing the events of this morning, in case we need to press criminal charges later." "Do you think we should involve the police immediately?" I asked, still feeling fatherly pain despite everything that had happened. "First, let's secure your assets and gather complete evidence of his fraudulent activities. Then, we can decide whether to press charges for attempted murder. Nurse Chloe will be a crucial witness, as she witnessed the scene and documented the irregularities with your medical equipment. At 7:45 a.m., I solemnly signed the new will with James as a legal witness. The document was officially registered, establishing Emily as the sole universal heir and completely excluding Adam from any inheritance. Chloe returned discreetly to inform us that the day shift would begin in 15 minutes, which meant we had to finish our secret meeting before the new medical staff arrived. "James, this document must remain an absolute secret until we decide the appropriate time to reveal it," I instructed him as I placed a copy in my nightstand drawer, hidden among my personal belongings. "Completely understood. Michael, I will maintain total confidentiality until I receive specific instructions from you. Do you want me to contact Emily directly to inform her about the situation?" "Not yet. I prefer to handle that conversation personally when she comes to visit. Emily deserves to hear the truth directly from me, not through third parties." James left the hospital, maintaining his disguise as a medical consultant, carrying all the original legal documentation for safekeeping in his professional office. I remained in bed, pretending to be asleep, but internally experiencing a complex mixture of relief, deep sadness, and iron determination. I had made the most difficult decision of my life, but also the most necessary one to protect my dignity and the fruits of decades of honest work. At 8:50 a.m., Elizabeth arrived at the hospital carrying a bulky folder full of documents. Her face reflected worry and confusion, clearly intrigued by my urgent request to review financial paperwork at such an early hour. "Michael, I found some very strange things in the study," she said as she sat next to my bed and opened the folder with a serious expression. "There are documents I've never seen before, and some have very recent dates." Chloe, who had become our discreet ally, ensured we had complete privacy, closing the door and placing a "Do Not Disturb" medical consultation in progress sign on the outside. Elizabeth began to systematically show me every suspicious document she had located during her morning search. The first paper she showed me sent an immediate shock through me. It was a personal loan contract for $85,000, dated January 2024, signed by Adam Vasquez, using future family business inheritance as collateral. "Did you authorize this, Michael?" Elizabeth asked. Evident disbelief in her voice, I have never seen this document in my life, I replied, feeling the indignation grow in my chest. Adam used my company as collateral without my knowledge or consent. This constitutes serious financial fraud. The second document was even more alarming. A mortgage application for $125,000 on our Miami condo, submitted by Adam and Karen last February, listing Michael Vasquez as the joint guarantor. My signature had been poorly forged. Elizabeth, compare this signature with my authentic one on any official document, I asked, pointing to the obvious forgery. The differences are crystal clear to any handwriting expert. We continued reviewing the rest of the documentation. There were receipts for payments to private lenders, invoices for luxury items bought on credit, and even a preliminary sales contract for the Miami condo for $380,000, stating that the transaction would be completed once the inheritance succession was formalized. Michael, according to these papers, Adam and Karen have taken on total debts of over $180,000 in the last 6 months, Elizabeth calculated, mentally adding up all the figures, and it's all backed by properties that technically still belong to us. The magnitude of the financial betrayal left me temporarily speechless. Not only had they planned my murder, but they had also been meticulously preparing the plunder of my estate for months, forging my signature and compromising family properties without legal authorization. At that critical moment, Dr. Charles Johnson entered to make his morning medical round. His expression changed immediately upon seeing the folder of documents spread across my bed and the obvious tension in the air. "Good morning, Mr. Michael. How are you feeling this morning? I see you have an early visitor," he commented as he reviewed my clinical history on his tablet. "Dr. Johnson, I need to consult with you about something very important," I said, adopting a serious tone that immediately caught his professional attention. Nurse Chloe, from the night shift, witnessed a very irregular situation in my room during the early morning. "Could you speak with her to get the details?" The doctor nodded and used the internal intercom to call Chloe, who appeared a few minutes later with her nightly incident report. "Doctor, I registered a significant anomaly at approximately 3:30 a.m., Chloe explained with absolute professionalism. "The patient's son was found tampering with the oxygen equipment without authorization. When I arrived, the tube was disconnected, and Mr. Michael's saturation levels had dropped considerably." "Doctor," Johnson frowned as he carefully read the written report Chloe handed him. "This is very serious. Mr. Michael, any unauthorized interruption of the oxygen supply can have fatal consequences for a patient in your medical condition. Doctor, based on this situation, and for reasons of personal safety, I request that a visual monitoring system be installed in my room." I asked him directly. "I fear that similar incidents may be repeated." The doctor briefly reflected on my request. "That is a very unusual request, Mr. Michael, but considering the circumstances documented by Nurse Chloe, I can justify the installation of security cameras as a medical precaution. I would appreciate it enormously, Doctor. My peace of mind is fundamental to my recovery, and these incidents are causing me a lot of stress." I insisted with a convincing tone. "Perfect. I will immediately contact the hospital security department to have a discreet video surveillance system installed before noon. The cameras will record any activity in your room 24 hours a day." Once Dr. Johnson left to coordinate the installation of the security equipment, Elizabeth and I continued to analyze the fraudulent documentation. Each paper represented a new layer of betrayal and manipulation that they had been executing behind my back for months. "Michael, there's something else I have to show you," Elizabeth said with a particularly grave expression as she pulled a sealed envelope from the bottom of the folder. "I found this hidden behind other documents in the bottom drawer of the desk." I opened the envelope and found a series of photographs of our most valuable properties. The main house, the Miami condo, the central office of Vasquez Construction, and several investment plots. Each photograph had handwritten notes with market value estimates and projected sale dates. "Elizabeth, this proves they have been systematically cataloging all our assets for later liquidation." I analyzed as I examined each image. This was not an improvised plan. They have been preparing this plunder for a long time. The accumulated evidence painted a devastating picture of premeditation, fraud, and family betrayal that surpassed my worst expectations. Adam and Karen had not only planned my death, but they had also been meticulously preparing the appropriation of my entire estate. "What do we do now, Michael?" Elizabeth asked with tears in her eyes, clearly overwhelmed by the scale of our son's betrayal. "Now, we wait," I replied with cold determination. "The cameras will be installed before noon, and I am certain that Adam will return to try to finish what he started last night. This time, we will have irrefutable visual evidence of his murderous intentions." At 11:45 a.m., specialized technicians from the hospital security department finished discreetly installing 2 high-definition cameras in my room. One was strategically positioned to capture the entire area of the medical equipment, while the second offered a complete panoramic view of the room. The head of security, an experienced man named Robert Castle, personally explained the system's operation to me. "Mr. Michael, the cameras will record continuously in high resolution with ambient audio. Everything is automatically stored on our central servers, and you can also access the footage in real time from this discrete monitor." He showed me a small touchscreen installed next to my bed, camouflaged among the usual medical equipment. If you observe any suspicious situation, you can press this silent alert button, and security personnel will come immediately without making a sound. Elizabeth stayed by my side all morning, meticulously organizing all the documentary evidence we had compiled. We created a complete chronological file of every fraudulent transaction, every forged signature, and every financial commitment illegally made by Adam using my estate. "Michael, Emily called half an hour ago asking about your condition," Elizabeth informed me. "I told her you were stable, but that you preferred to rest today. When do you plan to tell her this whole situation?" "After we get the definitive visual evidence of Adam's intentions," I replied with determination. "Emily deserves to know the whole truth. But I want to have irrefutable proof before shattering her image of her brother." During the early afternoon, several members of the medical staff made their usual rounds, all commenting positively on my progressive improvement. Ironically, while my physical health was recovering, my emotional world was collapsing due to family betrayal. At 2:30 p.m., Dr. Johnson arrived with encouraging medical news. "Mr. Michael, your oxygen levels have completely stabilized, and the lung infection is responding excellently to the antibiotics. If we continue with this positive evolution, I could consider discharging you from the hospital within a week." "Doctor, would it be possible to maintain my appearance of frailty for a few more days?" I asked, with a request that clearly surprised him. "For personal reasons that I prefer not to detail, I need any visitor to perceive me as weak and vulnerable." The doctor observed me with professional curiosity, but respected my privacy. "I can adjust the medication to maintain some apparent drowsiness, and we can continue with the supplemental oxygen, even if it's no longer strictly necessary." "Is this related to the security system we installed?" "Exactly, doctor. I appreciate your understanding and absolute discretion," I confirmed, feeling relieved to have a medical ally who understood the gravity of my situation without asking unnecessary questions. Elizabeth temporarily went home to prepare food and bring clean clothes, but before she left, we arranged discreet signals to communicate during critical moments. If something serious happened, she would return immediately. March 16 dawned with a palpable tension in the air. I had slept restlessly, mentally anticipating the possible scenarios that would unfold during the day. The cameras had recorded a quiet night, but my instinct told me that Adam would return soon to complete his macabre plan. At 10:15 a.m., exactly as I had anticipated, Adam appeared at the door of my room. He was carrying fresh flowers and an expression of feigned concern that I could now clearly identify as a calculated performance. "Good morning, Dad. How are you feeling today?" he asked, as he placed the flowers in a vase by the window. His behavior seemed completely normal to any outside observer. I kept my eyes half closed and breathed with apparent difficulty, pretending to be weaker than I really was. "Adam, I feel very tired today," I murmured in a barely audible voice. "Don't worry, Dad. The doctors say your recovery is going very well. You just need to rest, and you'll be home with us soon," he replied. sitting next to my bed with false tenderness. For the next 20 minutes, we held a superficial conversation about everyday topics. Adam asked about my appetite, my pain levels, and my expectations for recovery. Everything sounded perfectly normal, like any conversation between a father and son during a hospitalization. However, I was discreetly observing his every move, waiting for the moment he would reveal his true intentions. The cameras were silently recording every word, every gesture, every facial expression that would later serve as irrefutable legal evidence. At 11:30 a.m., Adam got up and walked to the window, seemingly admiring the view from the hospital. "Dad, there's something I need to discuss with you when you feel more energetic," he said, without turning towards me. "What do you need, son?" I asked, maintaining my performance of extreme weakness. "It's about the company. Dad, Karen and I have been thinking that maybe you should consider gradually transferring management to the next generation. You're already 68, and this medical scare has made us reflect on the future." His words confirmed exactly what I had heard during his nighttime confession 2 days earlier. He was initiating the conversation that would eventually lead him to reveal his criminal plans on camera. "Adam, I still don't feel prepared for those important decisions," I responded weakly, giving him rope to continue developing his strategy. "I understand perfectly, Dad. But think about it, Vasquez Construction could be worth more than $2 million if we decide to sell it at the right time. With that amount, you and Mom could live comfortably without financial worries for the rest of your lives." The greed in his voice became more and more evident as he described his plans to liquidate my estate. I continued to pretend to be too weak to fully process his suggestions, which encouraged him to be more specific and direct in his proposals. "Besides, Dad, Emily lives in Chicago and clearly has no interest in the family business. It would be more practical for Karen and me to take care of all the administrative and legal aspects," he added as he returned to sit next to my bed. It was exactly the opening I had been waiting for. "Adam, I think I need to rest a little more," I murmured, closing my eyes completely and relaxing my whole body to simulate that I had fallen into a deep sleep due to exhaustion. My performance worked perfectly. Adam remained silent for several minutes, watching me, apparently verifying that I was completely unconscious. I could feel his breath approaching my face, probably checking the depth of my supposed unconsciousness. Once convinced that I was totally vulnerable, his behavior changed drastically. His voice took on the same cold, calculating tone I had heard in the early morning of March 14. "Perfect, you stubborn old man," he muttered to himself as he headed back towards the oxygen equipment. "This time there will be no inconvenient interruptions from meddling nurses." The security cameras meticulously captured his every move as he carefully inspected the oxygen tube. This time, however, his approach was much more cautious and systematic than his first attempt. 2 days wasted thanks to that damned nurse." He continued speaking in a low voice, clearly believing I couldn't hear him. "But now I have enough time to do this correctly, and without leaving any suspicious evidence." He began by slowly disconnecting the main tube from the oxygen supply. But this time he also manipulated the monitor controls so that the alarms would not activate immediately. His technical knowledge surprised me and made me realize that he had carefully studied the functioning of the medical equipment. Karen was right when she said we needed a more sophisticated plan, he confessed as he continued to manipulate the monitoring systems. "The $180,000 we owe can't wait any longer. The private lenders will start seizing properties next week if we don't make the full payment." His words confirmed the exact figures that Elizabeth and I had calculated based on the fraudulent documentation found at home. But now I was hearing directly from his mouth confirmation that they had used illegal lenders, which complicated the financial situation even further. Vasquez Construction can easily be sold for $2.3 million, according to the appraisals we did last month. He continued his confession as he verified that the oxygen had completely stopped flowing. "With that amount, we pay off all the debts, buy the condo in Miami that we've been looking at, and still have over $400,000 left for personal investments." The precision of his financial calculations showed me that this was not an improvised plan born of desperation, but a strategy meticulously planned for months. They had professionally appraised my company, identified potential buyers, and calculated exactly how much money they would get from my death. Emily will never suspect anything strange, he continued, as he made sure there was no physical evidence of tampering on the equipment. She lives too far away and barely visits New York twice a year. By the time she comes for the funeral, we will have already completed all the legal transactions. At that moment, my outrage reached levels I had never experienced in 68 years of life. Not only was I hearing the details of my own murder, but I also knew their plans to deceive Emily and steal her rightful inheritance. Karen's lawyer cousin has already prepared all the express succession documents, he added with evident satisfaction in his voice. In this state, when there's no specific recent will, the children automatically inherit in equal parts. Emily will get her share, of course, but we will control the sale and administration of all the assets. His ignorance of my new will gave me an additional strategic advantage. Adam and Karen had based their entire plan on the assumption that my 2021 will was still valid, never imagining that I had completely modified my testamentary provisions just 2 days earlier. For approximately 12 minutes, I remained without supplemental oxygen, while Adam meticulously arranged the scene to make it look like a natural, technical failure of the medical equipment. His previous experience on March 14 had taught him exactly what adjustments to make to avoid immediate alarms. This time, when the nurses discover the equipment malfunction, it will be too late to revive you, he murmured with sinister satisfaction. At your age and with pneumonia, oxygen deprivation for 15 minutes will be definitively fatal at that critical moment. When I was beginning to feel the first real symptoms of oxygen deprivation, I decided I had obtained enough incriminating evidence. It was time to execute the final phase of my strategy. I discreetly pressed the silent alert button that Robert Castle had installed next to my bed. The system would immediately send a signal to the Security Control Center, and specialized personnel would head to my room in less than 2 minutes. Simultaneously, I slowly opened my eyes and partially sat up in bed, pretending to gradually wake up from my deep sleep. My performance had to be perfectly convincing to capture his reaction of total surprise. "Adam, what are you doing with my oxygen?" I asked in a weak but clearly audible voice, simulating confusion and disorientation from having woken up unexpectedly. His face instantly transformed into a mask of absolute terror. His eyes bulged, his skin turned dramatically pale, and his hands began to tremble uncontrollably. I had never seen a human being experience such a level of shock and panic. "Dad, I was just—" The tube looked like it was badly connected. He stammered desperately as he tried to quickly reconnect the oxygen supply with clumsy, nervous movements. "Adam, I heard everything you said," I declared, my voice gradually regaining its natural strength and authority. "Every word about the $180,000 in debt, the plans to sell my company for $2.3 million, and your intentions to murder me to collect the inheritance." His legs began to fail him, and he had to lean against the wall to keep from falling. His mouth opened and closed without producing any sound, like a fish out of water gasping for breath. At that exact moment, the door opened, and 3 security guards entered the room discreetly, followed by Chloe and Dr. Johnson, who had been automatically alerted by the emergency system. "Gentlemen, everything that just happened has been recorded by our security cameras," Robert Castle announced as he showed his tablet with the real-time images. "We have complete visual evidence of unauthorized tampering with medical equipment and explicit confessions of criminal intentions." Adam completely collapsed into a chair, covering his face with his hands as he sobbed uncontrollably. "Please, don't call the police yet." Adam sobbed between desperate tears. "Dad, I can explain everything. Things got really complicated, and we didn't know what to do. I never really wanted to hurt you." His pathetic display caused a mixture of contempt and pity in me that I never thought I would experience towards my own son. After hearing his detailed confessions about murder plans, he was now trying to minimize the severity of his criminal acts. "Robert, please play the full recording so that everyone present can hear exactly what my son confessed while he believed I was unconscious," I requested, maintaining a firm and controlled tone. Robert Castle connected his tablet to the large monitor in the room and played the entire recorded sequence from the moment Adam had begun tampering with the oxygen equipment. The images were crystal clear, and the audio perfectly captured every word of his confession. "Doctor?" Johnson listened with an increasingly grave expression, while Chloe took additional notes for the official medical report. The security guards remained in strategic positions, ready to act if the situation became more tense. "Mr. Michael, according to these recordings, your son not only deliberately attempted to interrupt your oxygen supply, but also explicitly confessed intentions to cause your death for financial gain," Robert declared with absolute professionalism. "Dad, please forgive me," Adam implored, kneeling by my bed. "We're desperate because of the debts. The lenders threatened to hurt us physically if we don't pay this week. We couldn't find any other solution. Adam, incurring $180,000 in debt using my company and my properties as collateral without my authorization already constitutes serious financial fraud." I responded with absolute coldness. "But planning my murder as a solution to your financial problems crosses every imaginable line." At that moment, James Miller appeared at the doorway. I had called him discreetly the night before, and we had agreed that he would arrive at exactly this time with all the legal documents necessary for the final confrontation. "Good morning, Michael. I see the situation has developed as we anticipated," James said as he entered, carrying his leather briefcase and observing the scene with a serious but controlled expression. Adam immediately recognized our family lawyer, and his face turned even paler, intuitively understanding that James's presence meant additional legal complications for him. "James, please show Adam the document we officially registered on March 15, 2024. I requested directly, without preamble or unnecessary explanations." James took a folder from his briefcase and handed a certified copy of the new will to Adam, who received it with trembling hands. His eyes quickly scanned the document, his expression shifting from initial shock to absolute horror. This can't be real," he murmured, reading the clauses that completely excluded him from any inheritance. "Dad, you can't do this. I'm your son. You were my son, until the moment you decided to become my potential murderer," I retorted with a firmness that surprised even those who knew me well. "This will states that Emily Vasquez will receive the entirety of Vasquez Construction, all real estate properties, bank accounts, and any asset of value belonging to my estate." Adam began to hyperventilate as he absorbed the full implications of his new reality. Not only had he lost any hope of an inheritance, but he also faced criminal charges for attempted murder and financial fraud. Furthermore, "Adam, this will include specific clauses that invalidate any debt incurred using my name, my company, or my properties as collateral without explicit written authorization," James added with an implacable professional tone. "That means the $180,000 you owe to private lenders is entirely your personal responsibility. My estate is completely protected from any claims by your creditors," I continued, explaining the legal consequences of his fraudulent actions. Karen chose that exact moment to make her dramatic entrance into the room, apparently alerted by someone about the critical situation unfolding. Her face reflected a mixture of fury and desperation that made her seem completely unhinged. "What is going on here?" she shouted, aggressively addressing me. "Why are there security guards? And why is Adam crying? Karen, your husband has just been caught trying to murder me for the second time, to collect an inheritance that no longer exists," I explained with absolute calm, secretly enjoying her reaction of total disbelief. Robert played the recordings again for Karen's benefit, who listened with growing horror to Adam's detailed confessions about their criminal plans and the fraudulent debts. "This is a trap!" Karen shrieked when she finished listening to the evidence. "You've manipulated these recordings to frame Adam." "My father-in-law has always been manipulative and controlling. Ma'am, these recordings were made by professional hospital security equipment with full legal certification," Robert intervened, showing the technical metadata that guaranteed the image's authenticity. "Any forensic expert will confirm that they have not been altered or manipulated." Chloe added her professional testimony. "Furthermore, I personally witnessed the first attempt to tamper with the oxygen equipment during the early morning of March 14. Everything is documented in my official reports. Karen turned to Adam, desperately looking for some explanation that could minimize the gravity of the situation, but he remained paralyzed by shock and the realization that his life had changed irreversibly. Adam, say something. Explain to them that this is a misunderstanding, she pleaded, shaking him by the shoulders. There's nothing to explain, Karen, Adam responded in a broken voice. We planned it together. We needed the money. And we thought no one would ever find out. His final confession eliminated any possibility of denial or later manipulation. Both of them had been completely exposed, with irrefutable evidence of their criminal intentions and fraudulent activities. James, proceed with the necessary legal steps to completely protect my assets, I instructed, as I watched the couple I had considered family fall apart before my eyes. I have already prepared the complaints for attempted murder, document fraud, and use of forged documents, James confirmed. I have also contacted an economic crimes specialist to recover any assets they may have illegally transferred. Justice, finally, was beginning to manifest. Karen's reaction was explosive and completely predictable. She lunged towards my bed, screaming incoherent accusations, while the security guards professionally intercepted her before she could physically reach me. "You're a monster!" she bellowed with uncontrolled fury. "Adam is your son. How can you destroy your own family for money? Everything we've done has been out of desperation, not malice." Her hypocrisy was nauseating to me. After meticulously planning my murder and committing fraud for months, she was now trying to present herself as a victim of desperate circumstances. Karen, the $180,000 you owe didn't magically appear overnight, I responded, maintaining a calm tone that contrasted dramatically with her hysteria. You consciously took out loans, forged my signature, and used my properties as collateral without authorization. That requires deliberate planning, not impulsive desperation. James intervened, showing the complete folder of fraudulent documentation that Elizabeth had compiled. Mrs. Vasquez, we have evidence of at least 15 separate financial transactions made over the last 8 months, using Mr. Michael's estate as unauthorized backing. Karen's eyes darted to the documents with an expression of growing desperation. She knew perfectly well that each paper represented additional incriminating evidence that would further complicate her legal situation. Furthermore, James continued relentlessly, we have located photographs of family properties with handwritten notations of market valuations and projected sale dates, all in your husband's own handwriting. Adam finally lifted his head, his eyes red from crying, and looked directly at Karen. We can't deny anything anymore, Karen. It's all documented and recorded. We've completely lost. Shut up, Adam, his wife screamed at him. Don't say anything else without a lawyer present. It was too late for legal defense strategies. The evidence was overwhelmingly clear, and the recorded confessions eliminated any possibility of arguing innocence or mitigating circumstances. At that moment of maximum tension, Emily suddenly appeared in the doorway. She had taken the first flight from Chicago after Elizabeth called her that morning, partially explaining the gravity of the family situation. Dad, what is happening here? Emily asked with a confused expression as she took in the scene. Security guards, lawyers, recording equipment, and her family members in a state of total emotional collapse. Emily, sit down, please. You need to hear something that will forever change your perspective on your brother, I said, indicating a chair far from the chaos surrounding Adam and Karen. Robert played the complete recordings again for Emily's benefit, who listened in absolute silence to Adam's detailed confessions about his plans for murder and asset appropriation. Her face gradually transitioned from initial shock to horror, then to disbelief, and finally to a deep sadness that broke my heart. Adam, did you really plan to kill Dad? For money? She asked him directly, her voice breaking with emotion. Her brother couldn't hold her gaze and hung his head in shame. Emily, things got very complicated. We owed money to dangerous people. We didn't see any other way out. And where did I fit into your plans? Emily continued, with a firmness that made me deeply proud. According to what I heard on those recordings, you planned to deceive me about the circumstances of Dad's death and manipulate the inheritance. Karen tried to interrupt with more desperate justifications, but Emily silenced her with an authoritative gesture that demonstrated the strong character I had always admired in her. I don't want to hear explanations from you, Karen. You were involved in a plan to murder my father. There is no possible justification for that, Emily declared, with an emotional maturity that far exceeded that of people much older. Emily, your father changed his will to completely exclude Adam and leave you as the sole universal heir, James informed her, handing her a copy of the legal document. Emily carefully read the will with a serious expression, mentally processing the implications of the decisions I had made over the last few days. Dad, I completely understand why you made this decision, she finally said, as she approached my bed and took my hand with genuine tenderness. No one should have to face betrayal of this magnitude from their own family. Her unconditional support gave me a sense of emotional relief that I had been desperately needing since this whole nightmare began. Adam, Karen, I want you to leave this hospital immediately and not come near Dad ever again, Emily ordered, with a natural authority that commanded instant respect. You have caused enough damage and pain. Emily, please. We're family, Karen pleaded, making one last desperate attempt at emotional manipulation. Family doesn't plan murders for money, Emily replied with absolute coldness. You chose to become criminals. Now you must face the consequences of your decisions. The security guards, following instructions from Robert, formally escorted Adam and Karen out of the room and the hospital, with specific orders not to allow their return without explicit legal authorization. Dr. Johnson, I wanted on official medical record that Adam Vasquez and Karen Vasquez are prohibited from accessing this room and any information about my health status. I formally requested, completely understood, Mr. Michael. I will immediately update your clinical history with these access restrictions, the doctor confirmed, taking notes on his tablet. Once the room quieted down and we were left alone, Emily, James, Elizabeth, and I could finally take a deep breath and feel that I had regained complete control of my life and my estate. Dad, I am so sorry you had to go through this traumatic experience, Emily said to me, with tears in her eyes. I never suspected Adam was capable of something like this. Emily, neither you nor anyone could have anticipated this betrayal. Adam and Karen made conscious decisions that led them down a criminal path. You have no responsibility for their actions. What will happen to them now? She asked, with natural curiosity about the legal consequences her former family members would face. James will file criminal charges for attempted murder and document fraud, I explained. Furthermore, their private creditors will begin seizure proceedings when they discover they won't have access to my estate to settle their debts. Justice, finally, would take its natural course. 3 weeks later, on April 8th, I was discharged from the hospital fully recovered. The pneumonia had been successfully overcome, and ironically, all the emotional stress of the family betrayal had not negatively affected my physical recovery. Emily had remained in New York during that entire period, working remotely from Chicago and coordinating with James on all legal aspects related to the asset transfer and the judicial proceedings against Adam and Karen. Dad, I've been reviewing all the accounting books for Vasquez Construction in detail, Emily informed me as she organized documents on the dining room table of our family home. The company is in excellent financial shape, but I think we should consider diversifying the investments to better protect the assets. Her professional ability and strategic vision impressed me deeply. For years, I had underestimated her interest and competence in the family business, wrongly assuming that her independent career in Chicago meant a total disconnect from our business affairs. Emily, would you be interested in gradually taking over the direct management of the company? I asked her directly, feeling genuine curiosity about her future professional aspirations. Honestly, Dad, I think it would be more beneficial to sell Vasquez Construction to serious buyers and reinvest the capital in more modern, diversified sectors, she replied, with a business perspective that surprised me with its maturity and foresight. Her suggestion made solid economic sense. At 68, I no longer had the energy or the motivation to continue actively managing a construction company, especially after discovering that my planned heir had been illegally using the company to secure fraudulent loans. "Have you identified potential buyers?" I asked, interested in exploring that possibility. James connected me with 3 investment groups specializing in acquisitions of established construction companies. According to preliminary valuations, Vasquez Construction could be sold for approximately $2.4 million, considering our project history, stable clients, and real estate assets. The figure coincided almost exactly with the estimates Adam had mentioned during his recorded confessions, which added a bitter irony to the whole situation. He had correctly calculated the company's market value, but he would never receive a single dollar from that transaction during those weeks of recovery. James kept us informed about the development of the legal proceedings against Adam and Karen. The charges for attempted murder had been formally filed with the district attorney's office, supported by irrefutable video evidence and professional testimonies from the hospital staff. Michael, in addition to the criminal charges, we have initiated civil actions to recover any assets they may have transferred using falsified documents, James explained during one of his weekly visits. Although we probably won't recover much money, it's important to set legal precedents that protect your estate. "Have they tried to contact you directly or through intermediaries?" I asked, curious about their reactions to facing the real consequences of their criminal actions. Karen called my office several times trying to negotiate some kind of out-of-court settlement, but I explained clearly that there is no possibility of negotiation. "The criminal charges will follow their normal legal course," he replied with absolute professional firmness. Elizabeth, who had remained surprisingly strong throughout the entire family crisis, began to show signs of relief and personal renewal. The confirmation that Emily was completely trustworthy and loyal had eased her worries about the future of our family estate. "Michael, I think we should take advantage of this new stage of our lives to do things we had always postponed," she suggested one afternoon while preparing tea in the kitchen. "We have our health, we have financial resources, and now we have the peace of mind of knowing that Emily will responsibly take care of everything." Her suggestion made me reflect on opportunities I had been ignoring for years due to business obligations and family responsibilities that now turned out to have been misdirected. "What do you have in mind, Elizabeth?" I asked, feeling genuine curiosity about her personal aspirations. We always talked about traveling extensively through Europe, visiting museums, getting to know different cultures, but we never found the right time. Now we could plan long trips without financial worries or urgent business commitments. The idea was enormously appealing to me. For decades, I had postponed personal experiences in favor of professional and family obligations, many of which I now understood had been poorly directed emotional investments. Emily enthusiastically supported the suggestion of their travels. "Dad, Mom, you should definitely take this opportunity. I can coordinate the sale of the company and handle all the legal aspects with James. You deserve to enjoy this new stage without administrative worries." Over the following weeks, we began to seriously plan a series of extensive trips that would allow us to explore destinations we had always wanted to see. Emily coordinated with travel agencies specializing in trips for seniors, ensuring we had comfortable but exciting itineraries. On May 15, Emily presented me with a formal offer to purchase Vasquez Construction for $2.35 million, submitted by a Catalan investment group with an excellent reputation and solid business references. "Dad, I've thoroughly reviewed their financial background and business references. They are completely reliable and offer very favorable payment terms, 40% at the time of signing the contract, and the remaining balance in 6 monthly installments with minimal interest. Emily, proceed with the sale. I trust your professional judgment and your ability to handle this transaction completely," I confirmed, feeling total peace of mind about delegating this responsibility into competent and loyal hands. Meanwhile, news about Adam and Karen reached us sporadically through mutual acquaintances. Their financial situation had deteriorated dramatically after the private lenders discovered they would not have access to my estate to recover their loans. "Michael, according to reports I received from contacts in the financial sector. They have lost their condo to foreclosure and are currently living in a rented room on the outskirts of New York. James informed me during one of our legal follow-up meetings. Has Adam found stable work? I asked, feeling a morbid curiosity about how he was facing the real consequences of his criminal decisions. Apparently, he works as a food delivery driver for one of those mobile apps. His pending criminal record has significantly complicated his traditional employment options. The poetic justice of his situation didn't give me personal satisfaction, but it did confirm that decisions have real and proportional consequences. Adam had consciously chosen the path of betrayal and crime, and now he was directly experiencing the results of those choices. On June 1, we officially signed the sale of Vasquez Construction, thus completing my definitive transition into full retirement, and freeing me from any business responsibility that tied me to New York. On December 3, 2024, as the plane took off from the New York airport bound for Rome, I felt an emotional release I hadn't experienced in decades. Emily was sitting by the window, reviewing our 2-year travel itinerary, which included 15 different countries across Europe, Asia, and America. Dad, our first destination will be Rome for 2 weeks, then Florence, then Paris, and in January we'll be in Switzerland for skiing, she explained with genuine enthusiasm, showing the hotel reservations on her tablet. During the 8 months since my release from the hospital, my life had undergone a complete transformation that exceeded my most optimistic expectations. The sale of Vasquez Construction for $2.35 million had provided absolute financial security for the rest of our lives, and more importantly, it had eliminated any material connection to the betrayals of the past. Emily had proven to be an exceptional manager of our resources, intelligently diversifying investments and establishing reserve funds that guaranteed stable passive income for decades. Her professional competence had far surpassed my initial expectations. Emily, I want to thank you for having handled the entire business and legal transition so professionally. I told her sincerely as the plane reached cruising altitude. Without your support and competence, I would never have managed to resolve this family crisis so successfully. Dad, I always knew that one day we would have to face difficult situations as a family, but I never imagined they would be so extreme, she replied with mature reflection. The important thing is that you discovered the truth before it was too late to protect yourself. During the first few months after the hospital, Emily and I had developed a much deeper and more authentic father-daughter relationship than we had maintained for years. Her unconditional support during the crisis had revealed personal qualities that I had underestimated due to geographical distance and our sporadic interactions. The legal proceedings against Adam and Karen had followed their natural legal course. In October, both had been convicted of document fraud and attempted murder. Adam received a 4-year prison sentence, while Karen was sentenced to 3 years for criminal complicity. James informed me last week that the judicial seizures recovered approximately $35,000 in assets they had acquired with fraudulent loans. Emily had told me during our travel preparations, it's not a significant amount, but it sets important legal precedents. Justice had prevailed completely. Although the emotional consequences of the whole experience would stay with me permanently, I had lost a son. But I had gained a deep understanding of authentic loyalty and the true value of honest family relationships. During our flight to Rome, I reflected on the fundamental changes in my perspective on family, money, and life's purpose. Adam's betrayal had been devastating, but it had also been a catalyst for discovering personal strengths I didn't know I had, and for genuinely valuing the people who deserved my trust and affection. Dad, do you ever regret the decisions you made regarding Adam? Emily asked me, with genuine curiosity about my internal emotional processes. Emily, the decisions I made were the only ones possible to protect my dignity and my literal survival, I replied with absolute conviction. Adam consciously chose to become my enemy when he planned my murder. I simply responded appropriately to that threat. Do you think he will ever try to contact you again? She continued asking. From prison, he has sent several letters through intermediaries, but they have all been intercepted by James according to my specific instructions. I explained. I have no interest whatsoever in reading apologies or justifications from someone who tried to murder me for money. Emily nodded understandingly. Her emotional maturity in processing complex family situations continued to impress me and reaffirmed my confidence in having chosen her as my sole heir. During our first days in Rome, we experienced a sense of freedom and renewal that had been absent from our lives for years. We visited the Colosseum, the Vatican museums, the Trevi Fountain, and enjoyed long meals at traditional restaurants without any time pressure or financial worries. Michael, I can't remember the last time I felt so relaxed and optimistic about the future. Elizabeth confessed to me one afternoon as we walked through the cobbled streets of Trastevere. It's as if we've regained a youth we thought was lost. Her observation perfectly captured my own feelings. At 69, I felt more energetic and hopeful than I had during the previous decade, when I had been unconsciously carrying the weight of toxic family relationships and misdirected expectations. Emily had coordinated our itinerary to include enriching cultural experiences, gastronomic adventures, and enough free time for rest and personal reflection. Her meticulous planning allowed us to enjoy each destination without logistical stress or administrative worries during the nights in luxurious hotels. I frequently reflected on the dramatic contrast between my current situation and what my fate would have been if Adam had successfully executed his murderous plan. Instead of enjoying world travels with people who genuinely loved me, I would have been dead, and my estate would have been plundered by criminals who faked my paternal trust. Dad, I think this traumatic experience, although painful, finally freed you from family obligations that had been limiting you for years. Emily observed during a dinner at a restaurant overlooking the Roman Pantheon. Her perspective was profoundly accurate. For decades, I had been investing emotional energy and financial resources in relationships that turned out to be fundamentally false, while underestimating authentic connections that deserved greater attention and cultivation. Emily, my only regret is not having recognized your genuine loyalty sooner, and having allowed Adam to monopolize so much of my attention for years. I confessed honestly. The important thing is that now we have unlimited time to strengthen our relationship and create positive memories together, she replied, with an emotional wisdom that moved me deeply. As we planned our future destinations for the next 2 years, I felt a deep gratitude towards life for giving me a second chance to experience authentic happiness and family relationships based on genuine love instead of financial expectations. Adam's betrayal, paradoxically, had been the most valuable gift I could have received. My own liberation towards a full, authentic life, surrounded only by people who deserved my trust and affection. At 69 years old, I had finally begun to truly live. If you like this story, give the video a like, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions in the comments. To hear the next story, click on the box on the left. Thanks for watching.